and welcome back to Monster Minis. In this video, I'm going to construct a small vignette for this 1/20th scale Frank Von Stein from the Dust 1947 universe. He is a zombie experiment for the German Blues Cruise. Frank here is a nicely detailed resin kit. Didn't require much cleanup. However, it was incredibly difficult to get any glue to stick. I tried a couple different glues. I tried a super glue. I tried a polyurethane glue. Nothing would hold. So I ended up assembling the entire model with green stuff that would actually hold and worked as it was a workable gap filler as well as an adhesive. Frank has claws on both of his arms that did not have sufficient details in which to attach these claws. He's modeled with a couple straps on his arms that the claws are supposed to attach to. However, I couldn't get the glue to attach his torso together, let alone hold a small claw on his arm. So I decided to build the mounts for the claws with green stuff. I primed Frank with Mr. Surfacer in brown, gave it a really nice base coat for what was going to come next. About a year ago, Ninjon did a video on his channel titled Painting the Rarest Space Marine on the Planet, and I'll put a link in the description. He painted a really large-scale Space Marine holding a Tyrannid that was a display base, but he did it in a way that really inspired me. He went in with an airbrush and painted in the highlights and the shadows first, showing the light coming in from a specific direction. Okay, and then he just went back in and glazed the colors of the model in over the top to put in all the details. And I thought this was just number one, it's a great video and I recommend you go watch it. Number two, I was really inspired by this because I thought, how cool would this be? I have this largest scale model I've ever painted, 1/20th scale, to paint in the colors first, like paint in the lighting effects first, and then let that drive how to paint the model. So the first thing I'm going to do is I had to decide where the light source was going to come from. And the first color I'm going to lay down is going to be this deep blue. That's going to be the shadow layer that's going to block in most of the color that's going to set the base for the rest of the paint job. And honestly, this just looks incredibly cool right now. I was really liking it at this stage, seeing the shadows and the highlights. And I felt like not only was it a really cool place to start, it basically gave me the blueprint of how to paint him. This is a 20th scale figure I'm about to brush paint, which is a massive departure from what I would normally do. You know, my style is really to come in and build the colors with the airbrush and then come in and paint some details and then wash everything down and give it that gritty look. I really like that. I'm really comfortable with that. We're just going to lay in the color with the airbrush. And then I'm going to come in here with a number 6 Ammo of MIG synthetic brush, a wet palette, and glaze in the colors on this model. So I start off with a series of neutral colors, grays, like a deep gray and like a lighter gray, to paint the pants. He wears his traditional World War II German Army wool pants. And then for his skin, Frank is a zombie. I'm basically using a very similar palette with the grays to his pants, but then glazing in with very thin layers, a little bit lighter gray than his pants, but just light enough so that I can really get that look of some sickly zombie skin. Now, I probably pushed this a little bit too far. You'll see that it really covers up a lot of the highlight colors, but there's enough of it in the shadows that I feel like you can still see it. I did really like how it came out on the leather bits. Once all the base color had been blocked in, I just went a little bit lighter and started to highlight all of the creases and folds in his pants. And then lightened it up a little bit more and came in and started to highlight his muscles, ridges on his arms, his exposed veins, and all of these areas that are a little bit higher. Now, when you look at this model, Frank has very clearly been stitched together, and those stitches are very prevalent on the model. So I wanted to highlight that. So I used Secret Weapon Miniatures acrylic washes in like a dried blood color to come in and highlight around all of the areas where he's got metal components and around all of his stitches and these lines where he's had work done. And after a couple applications of this, I really felt like it started to look like unhappy skin. It started to look like it hurt. Setting aside Frank to dry, I'm moving on to the base construction. Once again, using one of the circular bases from Amazon with an integrated LED and switch. Still working on the leftovers of the oak veneer that I used on the Normandy diorama, link in the description. I'm going to be using creative paper clay as the base for the vignette. I want Frank to be walking across a cobblestone street in the scene. I'm going to be using Green Stuff World's texture rollers. This one specifically is the flagstone. Now, the clay needs something to stick to, so I heavily scored the foam so that when it's rolled into the base, it will stick. Moment of truth. Using the textured roller, applying probably 50% more pressure than I wanted to, doing one long continuous pass across the base. A couple of the areas pulled up a little bit and stuck to the roller, but that was okay. I was able to stick those back down, and the areas that pulled up completely get covered up later with some ground cover. I painted the street with Ammo's dry brush paint and a dry brush, basically blocking in some grays and then highlighting with white. To add a little bit of color variation into the roadway, I grabbed some of Secret Weapon Miniatures acrylic washes in a couple of the different colors and just started randomly picking out bricks and painting them in different colors. Once that was dry, I used a black acrylic wash to unify the entire surface and give it that dirty street look. At a couple areas on the base where the clay was damaged during the rolling process, and the area where the streetlight base was mounted, that needed to be covered up. So I used a little spiky beige grass from Gamer's Grass. Quick haircut and we're good to go. I stained the veneer with Minwax's Poly Shades in Satin Bombay Mahogany. The eagle-eyed among you will notice that I didn't focus any of the video thus far on the street lamp that you've seen. That street lamp has an LED light in it and was supposed to light the scene. It stopped working during construction and did not make it to the final cut. So I had to come up with a different solution for the street lamp and that location, and I decided on just doing a fire burning in a barrel. So I had this 35th scale barrel that I found in another kit that seemed to be the perfect size for this scene, so I pillaged it from that kit and assembled it. Once again, disassembled a flame effect tea light candle and used that for the light in the burning barrel. These bases from Amazon all have a 3-volt power source already wired into them, so it makes using these 3-volt LEDs really handy. Once the light was working, I filled the entire barrel with some fiber fill. This will help diffuse the light and give it more of a flame effect, and look a little bit like smoke. So Bob Ross used to say, "Here's your bravery test." And he would go in and draw this huge tree right in the foreground of this perfect painting that you felt like didn't need anything else. Well, if you go watch Ninjon's video, you'll see that when he finishes all of the brush work on that big Space Marine, he comes back in with the airbrush and he hits the shadow and highlight colors one more time. I think it looks fantastic. It's awesome. I failed my bravery test. I was so happy with how Frank looked at the end of the brush painting session that I could not bring myself to load the airbrush up again and hit him with a blast of color. He would probably look amazing if I did, but I just was so happy with it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. So hats off to Ninjon on this. It was definitely an inspiration. Hopefully the next time I try this, which I will because I really enjoyed it, I will get the airbrush back out for that final step. And here is the finished scene. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.